Okay, paradigm shifters, we are back with part 2 of the 2024 energy forecast, and happy new year to everyone, and a big shout going out to Pope Gregory for his wonderfully inaccurate Gregorian calendar that disconnects humanity from the natural cycles of time. Congratulations for that effort. Nice one, bro. So we are now looking at, in this video, the theme that I'm giving for 2024, which is the year of convergence. What does that mean? In what context am I referring to that? Well, following on from 2023 being the year of the counter move, 2024 is the year of convergence, with the accumulation of various political, social, economic, and environmental problems basically converging on each other, and as an effect, producing the effect that there is a growing awakening in humanity at this level of consciousness, at least. And this is a follow-on from some of the effects that I spoke about in the last video of the failing of the control of the narrative by the globalists, whatever name you want to give to it, the cult, the cabal, it doesn't really matter at this point. The controlling entity or the power structure of this planet, which is at a global level, and how they are basically failing to control the narrative of the various social engineering projects that they are working on. So much so, actually, that they've actually had to move forward some of their plans, which they've actually spoken about openly. So they are under a lot of pressure now to complete this control, particularly of the internet, particularly of control of information, because they're so badly losing the information war, if you want to look at it like that. Now, we see here in Australia the creation of this misinformation bill, whatever you want to call it. It's basically outright attack on free speech itself, and the various mechanisms that will then feed into that will obviously be the CBDC. You have to be living in some kind of parallel reality not to see that the banks are closing their branches, that there are less ATMs. I mean, this is all in the public domain of information, and also that there are more and more businesses going cash free, which is also having a major backlash because of the outages that we've seen this year with some of the major banks not being able to transact electronically. So the backlash obviously is people therefore are using cash where they can. More people are, and this is anecdotally being reported to many different people by small, medium enterprises, at least, that people are using cash. I've even asked several major businesses, retail businesses, do many people pay with cash? And they're tending to tell me, at least at the cashiers, that yeah, a lot more people are starting to use cash. So this is a very positive sign. But nevertheless, this attempt to have this programmed digital money is part of their agenda, and we will see this being revealed for what it really is sooner rather than later. At least at this time, we have the option of cash, which means that programmable currency, in the terms of things like it's geo-fenced. Why that? What does that mean? You can't spend it out of a certain geographical area. It's geo-fenced. If things are digital, it can have all kinds of controls, limits, parameters on the actual spending of that currency. And again, because we're in this year of 2024, which I'll come to why some of the astrological configurations means that the masses will start to move from this fantasy that the conspiracy theories that they believe people are out there are pushing conspiracy theories are actually part of an orchestrated global agenda. And there is no theory about it. The only context you can use the word theory is that it actually hasn't become reality yet, but it's part of the plan. So The other thing with this digital currency is that it can have a use by date, which therefore means you cannot save any money. You can only spend it. And I would challenge people who laugh at, still in their complete ignorance and foolishness, that laugh at these sorts of suggestions and these sorts of information. If someone in 2019 had told you that you were not going to be able to cross the borders to New South Wales if you lived in Queensland, you would not be able to go see your family members die in hospital, you would not be able to go to a restaurant, a movie theatre, or some of the other public venues unless you'd had the magic potion, that you would basically have to wear a mask in public, you would have to use a QR code to sign in to various restaurants and cafes and so on, that you would lose your job unless you took a certain medication, that you would be locked in your house, that if you lived in Melbourne, you would not be able to go 5 kilometres from your house, that you would actually be under a curfew. I would suggest that 90% of the population in this country would laugh at some sort of suggestion, and yet how easily people forget that that was the reality in 2020 onwards. So many of the things that are in this context referring to as convergence, many people in this year will get a very, very cold shower in terms of their belief system, and also the universe is calling out for you to actually evolve at this level of consciousness, which, as I always refer to, is the lower level of consciousness. But nonetheless, people will choose or not to choose to evolve. And what is important for the people on the awakening journey to remember is that you are not responsible for anybody else's evolution but your own. Now, this does not mean by any means at all that people who have taken the magic potion are therefore necessarily less evolved than people that haven't. And this will not be a definitive litmus test for people moving forward into superior states of consciousness or not. However, for some people, it will be for them defining. So this is a complex issue which I won't go into here, but just to make it clear, there are some people that I know personally that are not vaccinated, they're completely toxic. And there are other people who are very well-meaning, very caring people who were conned and were unable to see the propaganda, the nefarious agenda that was being put forward. However, the spiritual test mainly at this level is one of pride and ego, actually, to admit that you were fooled. And this is going to be where the real progress is. And this is a lesson in humility and transparency and also authenticity, which they are big lessons for some people, because some people have this attitude that they could never be fooled, that they basically are a mover and shaker in this system and so on. But unfortunately, they don't understand that they're basically a pawn just like everybody else. And it's this arrogance and egocentricity that is basically stopping them from actually progressing at an evolutionary level. But there's still an opportunity to move forward. So it's an ongoing, people are at this point a work in progress. So with the details of some of the things that I'll mention in this series of videos for the 2020 forecast, I will just give this anecdotal story about something that I witnessed when I was in India many years ago. I heard a Lama come from Dharamsala to Rishikesh, and he was a Rinpoche, which is actually a very special Lama. It means precious jewel. And he was still a young Lama, but he'd been identified as in the Tibetan tradition as having, obviously abilities, not necessarily paranormal powers, but he gave a very detailed account of the Chinese invasion of Tibet. And he basically outlined that not everyone in Tibet suffered the same way. In fact, there were some people who really weren't affected that significantly by the Chinese invasion, and yet there were also other people that were affected very harshly and had major implications for their life. Now, I'm not suggesting that China is going to invade Australia at all, but I am mentioning this story in the context that, as he stated, it will all depend on your karma, how you were affected by these huge events. If you think about any nation being invaded by another nation, it completely disrupts the way of life that they were used to permanently, at least for that lifetime. So my point is that depending on your own individual karma, your own merits, what efforts you've made in this life, what karmic lessons, what soul lessons you've come to learn, what you feel at a very deep subconscious connection to your higher self, to your soul, you need to learn. And that will depend radically on the individual and the individual soul journey. So when I make some of this information, don't think that it necessarily applies to you or applies to everyone, because as we've seen through the pandemic, that many people actually really thrived during this time and actually had a lot of good fortune. So it's very, very limiting and very, very fear-based if you put yourself in the bracket that everything bad that can happen will happen. And at the same time, we also need to be aware, without being in a fear-based mindset, of what's unfolding at a global level, because there is also a certain naivety in the New Age community that we just are on a different timeline. And I would suggest that living with those sort of delusions is going to prove to be extremely challenging further on, because there are, whatever you consider to be different timelines, there are timelines that are applicable or outcomes that are applicable to every single human on this planet. And we are all experiencing the same thing. And if you live in a certain country, then we are all experiencing the same thing with some certain aspects of life, whatever it is. So to live in this naive way will perhaps be the lesson for some of these people in New Age, actually. But at the same time, people will adjust their belief systems as they start to realize that having this kind of evolutionary impulse at this time as a kind of hobby, as a kind of pastime, or as a spiritual bypass, or as some sort of way of escapism, which is a big one in the New Age, or some sort of coping mechanism for trauma, or to avoid confronting yourself, to avoid your depression, to avoid your addiction, to avoid your failed hopes and dreams, whatever it is, in the long term is highly unwise. So this convergence means that the stacking of these problems converging on each other and interrelating with each other, like breakdown of supply chains and so on. For example, I went to buy a gas oven from a retailer last month, I think, recently, and they didn't have any. In fact, there was 16 other people just here in Queensland waiting for the exact same gas oven and cooktop, which is assembled in Australia, and they couldn't even give me a time for when this oven would be ready, which is fine. But they said to me really clearly, and this is a major retailer, they said that people think that after the pandemic that everything's gone back to normal with supply chains, and it hasn't. And they even said that there was this is what they told me, there was a hack at one of the ports that set back the the distribution of the cargo, the containers, weeks and weeks, just because of this one hack, which shows how things can be disrupted. And we've seen this in 2023 with various hacks, for example, at Optus and so on. Or I can't even remember if that was actually necessarily a hack, so I apologize if I got that wrong. But yeah, the internet was down at least. So let's move on from this. The point here is that I'm basically saying that the theme will be the year of convergence, but it will also bring us in, the humanity in, and it will vary across different countries, into a state of unity, because these disruptions, whether it's the grid going down, whether it's a bail-in because the banks fold, or there's some disruption to the banking system, or to the electrical grid, or to the internet system, whatever it is, it will actually bring everyone into a state of unity. And it also will bring people into a state of recognition that we are in a systemic crisis, which is ultimately the function of Pluto in Capricorn. And we are now drawing to a close of that particular transit. And from an astrological point of view, the Pluto will move into Aquarius in January. It will stay there, I think, until about November. There's a short retrograde motion, and then after that it will stay in Pluto for over 20 years. So, sorry, in Aquarius for over 20 years. So the transit of Pluto in Aquarius, which I've been talking about since I think it was the very first Paradigm Shift Summit, maybe the second one, I don't remember, 2016, 2017. And the significance of this is going to be pretty big. We've already seen the first transit of Pluto moving into Aquarius. A lot of people got really excited about how big this transit would be, but it's Pluto, so the effects of it won't be visible immediately. And so many people, again, with this sort of looking for an external savior, this time in the form of a planet, basically will be disappointed. And the mantra with Pluto is that it is the power of a tsunami moving at the speed of a glacier. So Pluto is a impersonal planet, so its transits are long, they are slow, but they go deep. And because it's a transpersonal planet, it affects the collective. And so this is very important to consider, because we'll all be affected by this, and we'll be moving into this Aquarian mindset collectively, which will have breakthroughs in technology. It'll be very futuristic, and we'll start to get a taste of the rebellion in some ways, and the humanitarian qualities of the Aquarian energy. And at the same time, at the shadow will be some of the pitfalls of AI, which is moving very quickly, which will be another very big theme for 2024 and across this decade, is what are we seeking from AI, and what is the shadow aspect of AI. So this is also something to consider, and will be philosophical and an ethical debate, as much as a practical application of technology itself in our lives and how we go about using that. So that's something that will also be one theme of 2024. It's not really defined in the context of one year or another, but AI is not going anywhere in the short term. So in terms of the astrological transits for 2024, just at least in the beginning, we will have the new moon coming up soon. Mercury will be going direct tomorrow on the 2nd of January in the afternoon here in Australia. Of course, we'll still be in the shadow period, but that's moving direct. Jupiter has just gone direct yesterday or the day before. And so finally we get some forward motion in Jupiter. It's a big effect on me, that planet, as it's been in retrograde motion since September. So with this more internalized focus, this more slowing down and reflective focus of Jupiter, now we're moving forward with Jupiter, and as Jupiter is giving this expansion, and Jupiter will be one of the key planets in 2024 for astrological configurations, particularly in regard to the conjunction with Uranus in April. So this is going to be in Taurus, obviously, so you should look in your chart, wherever Taurus is, whatever will happen here will amplify, it will get bigger. And because it's Uranus, it will be unpredictable. It will be like a wild card. It will be sudden. And it's difficult to say how this is going to show up, but you can look in your house to see which house it will be for you personally, at least in the collective, because it's going to be in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus. It could have some effect on the banking system, the monetary system, our own values, finances, and any of these Venusian qualities that are related with the energy of Taurus. So it is pretty much hands in the dirt. Could be some sort of something to do with not so much the earth, but our relationship to the earth and so on. And we'll have to wait and see. But it is a big conjunction for 2024 early on. So as I said, Mercury going direct, Uranus is also going direct later in Jan, and Jupiter is now direct. So there's going to be a lot of forward moving there. And also Pluto and Aquarius, which it may take some years for these qualities to show up of the Aquarian nature, but it will start to ripple through the collective mind, and will perhaps bring some more existential questions to us in the context of how does humanity want to live in this next cycle, and humanitarianism itself, the greater good, and also the decay of the energy of Capricorn, Pluto moving out of Capricorn with its top-down structures and moving into more grassroots way of living. I'm noticing it in my local community here on the Mystical Mountain. There was even recently a initiative to educate a lot of the people around fire prevention. Particularly, we had a lot of, like, we live in Australia, there's like bushfires, it's summer, we're actually having a lot of rain at the moment. And that brings on to another topic, which I'll mention now at least, is weather modification will be another trend in 2024, to see how long it's going to take until people in this country start to realise that the weather is being modified through geoengineering. I mean, this is no mystery. Open your eyes and look up in the sky. I'll spell it out for you. A contrail from a plane dissipates in 1 to 2 minutes max. Look at a contrail, watch it dissipate quickly. A chemtrail does not dissipate quickly. It is there for a considerable period of time and then dissipates gradually. And it can be seen because they're spraying them in such long lines. I mean, we're a long way from here in Australia before people start to realise that this is a serious topic affecting the weather, affecting all kinds of, the storms, the floods. I'm not saying it's 100% mathematical, but many people have been reporting throughout December in 2023, chemtrails being sprayed from planes daily. And now we have these big storms where people on the Gold Coast are still without electricity for days and days. Trees are down, power lines are down, people don't have internet. It's been restored in most places now, but just again today, there's more flooding on the Gold Coast. And this question is costing people a lot more in their premiums that they're paying in their insurance. The damage to houses, of course, is colossal, and disruption of life. Then there's all the economic fallout to disruption of businesses and trade and all these other things. And also it's just a major effect of how we're living, and particularly happening over Christmas and New Year, when everyone's on holidays and loves to go to the beach here in Australia at this time. So there will be more people starting to speak out about this. However, I think we're a long way away from any kind of official recognition that this is even actually occurring, because it's difficult to prove the causality between the geoengineering and then the storms. I don't know what the causality is. I'm not even claiming there is it's mathematical or something, but the conversation needs to start as, who is spraying these things from the sky? Why is it being permitted? what's the goal of this, and why is it not being revealed to the public? This is actually what's occurring, and why, when you can see it in the skies clearly, not every day, not even every week, but there's periods where people claim that it is happening a lot. So this is something to consider as well. So this is really everything to say for this video. I'll pick this up in the next video. Again, this is a series. I've been jumping around a little bit at the moment because it's late here, and just going what's easiest. I might even go into the spiritual dimension of things next. There's a lot of topics, there's a lot to talk about, and if you haven't seen the first one yet, watch the first video first. Should have said that at the start of the video. Thanks for watching. We live in epic times.